Welcome to the Modern Husbands podcast, where any combination of Dr. Bruce Ross, Christian Sherrill, and Brian Page host national experts who share winning ideas to manage money and the home as a team. Today, we welcome Tyler Moore, known as Tidy Dad. Tyler is the creator of the hugely popular Tidy Dad Instagram, TikTok, and website. A public school teacher in New York City, husband, and father of 3 young daughters, he has been featured on Good Morning America and in the Washington Post, New York Times, New York Post, and numerous other national outlets. In today's episode, the Tidy Dad shares his insights on maintaining a tidy home while balancing the demands of fatherhood, teaching, and personal growth. Enjoy the show. All right, you heard that, folks. We have the Tidy Dad with us, Tyler Moore. Tyler, good to see you.
Thanks, Brian. And we just started right off the bat before we started recording. We could have a whole off-the-cuff podcast, but I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. For those of you who are unaware, Tyler also teaches during the day amongst many other responsibilities. So if you are busy, you're going to identify exactly with Tyler. You're going to not only learn some time treasured tips on keeping your house tidy and being a great partner for your spouse, but you're also going to learn from someone who is down doing the work. He's not somebody that's just talking about it. Speaking of which, if you wouldn't mind providing our listeners with a little bit of context about like your family and your current work-life balance.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I feel like you said that much more eloquently, because what I often say is that I feel like I'm in the thick of it, which is what I know so many of your listeners are and so many people. And when I say like the thick of it, obviously, as you mentioned, I'm a dad, or I am a dad, but I'm a teacher by day. So I teach 5th grade. I'm a dad to 3 daughters. They're 9, 7, and 4. I'm lucky that they attend the same school where I teach. So we spend our morning commutes together, our afternoon commutes together. And then, as I like to joke, I'm Tidy Dad by early morning and then afternoon and evening. And so, as Tidy Dad, I really try to help people, just create space for what matters most. And sometimes that means physical decluttering, but also decluttering is a mental and emotional process. I feel like all of us, we're navigating so many different things in life. There's so many different seasons of life where we feel like our capacity is really stretched thin. And so I try to step in as best as possible and help just provide some tangible, realistic tips to help people just make sense of some of those messes that they experience on a day-to-day basis.
And you have to be particularly clever because you're in New York City. So I would imagine you have an apartment that's probably smaller than most homes in rural or suburban America. Well, how many square feet is your apartment?
Yeah, so our apartment is 750 square feet. And I do feel like New York City it's a very important like character in my story. I love teaching writing to kids. And so when I think about, sort of this like character journey that I'm on, it's like oftentimes New York City and the challenges of small space living is like a foe. And I am the hero that tries to come in and step in and say, hey, let's rethink like what to do with this really tiny playroom. I have, the 3 girls, they all share one bedroom. So I was able to help design a triple wardrobe system. They also have a triple bunk bed, so they're stacked triple high. So I feel like we've had to really think creatively about what to do with our space because we don't have a basement to stuff things away. We don't have an attic. We don't have the ability to just add on rooms. And, in a place like New York City, it's not so easy to just say, well, let's just move into a larger space because financially that brings up so many things. Not all square footage is created equally. And I live 6 blocks from the school where we all attend. And so if you can have a walking commute anywhere, I know that some people have a walking commute literally like from one side of the bedroom to the other if they're doing remote work. But if you have to leave your home, like being able to just walk 6 blocks is such a luxury that it helps us to make some of the other sacrifices with our small space. It just makes it a little bit easier.
And before we go on, of the 3 bunk beds, so you've got 3 tiers. Is the norm of fighting for the top still the same?
It's so funny because they're in age order. So the
Oh,
oldest is
okay.
at the top, my middle girl is in the middle, and then my youngest is on the bottom. Um, it's funny to think back because we've had it for several years. I don't even remember how the negotiation unfolded, but it's funny because of the three, I actually like the middle bunk, that it's like cozy. It's just like that cozy little spot that sometimes I'll even borrow it to like go read. But it is funny to think about, as a kid, I desperately wanted a bunk bed. And that was one of the things that I was most excited about going to college. Because I was like, I'm going to get a roommate and I'm going to get to have a bunk bed and I'm going to sleep on that top bunk. That's the, that's the bunk that I always wanted. And so for 3.5 years, I slept on that top bunk. And now my children have it. Even with my wife, I'm like, because they make so many configurations, I'm like, what if we got a queen over queen? Like we could have like
Ooh.
2 tiers of, like space, and we could have like a sitting room at the top, and then like our normal bed down below. So there's so many different creative ways now to use spaces and bunk beds that have like slides to them. That they're
Yeah.
from when we were kids. I feel like I just remember when I was a kid, I was like in the top bunk because my sister didn't want to sleep there. And it was when you could like roll the wrong way and you would knock all the slats off the bed and then you would fall out. So they have definitely the technology and the manufacturing and the craftsmanship have definitely improved since I was a kid.
Tell me about it. We used to have the old iron frames where if you
Oh
hit it
yeah.
with your shin, you had stitches and
Yes, yes. Yes, yes, and the ladder that could detach, so like if you were mad at somebody in the middle of the night, you would just steal their ladder. Like there's so many things, but our space, it is a constant puzzle. It is always evolving. And so, as Tidy Dad, it's cool because I feel like people are oftentimes like they see me, they see what I present, and I'm often a mirror into their own lives. Because whether you live in a small New York City apartment, whether you live in a suburban home, or I have this follower who has a castle in Europe, and
oh
she
my
kept
gosh.
asking me to help her problem solve how she could forget, or how she could stop forgetting her glasses on the other side of the castle, because she said walking back and forth like, and
I
I
hate
was
when that
like,
happens.
I know, I was like, I hate it when that happens. I know exactly what it's like to go to the East Wing and like not be able to find my things and have to walk back to the West Wing. Um, but it is interesting because regardless of where you live, we all have puzzles and things that we're trying to figure out. And I feel like
Yeah.
space is so important to each of us, that our homes are a refuge from the chaos sometimes of the world or from the messes that we experience at work. And so I do feel like when you're able to find the stuff that you want, that there's an inherent sort of feeling of peace or joy that comes from that, or feeling like you're surrounded by the things that inspire you or just make you feel comfortable. Like, I do think that that's something that people want, but oftentimes I'm able to help step in and remind them that, like, you can get to that place, but decluttering, editing, making a plan for your stuff is really important too.
So how has fatherhood shaped your approach to tidying and managing your home?
Well, I feel like growing up, I was a relatively tidy kid. I always liked having my things in a certain place. And I do feel like there's nothing like fatherhood that sort of just implodes everything. So, one, it's like whenever you add more kids to your space, it's like there's that sort of inherent sort of like chaos that comes with the diapers and the
Yeah.
bottles and the clothes that they're like rapidly outgrowing faster than you can get the new stuff in, and like the balls that are being chucked across the house and the paint that
The
splatters everywhere.
stroller. The
the
stroller.
stroller the stroller the car seat, I mean, one of the biggest spatial challenges we had was when our oldest daughter turned 6 months old and she started eating food, and we had to put her in a high chair, and literally the high chair could not fit in our kitchen because the only spot was between the oven and the table, and we had this very narrow walkway. So if she was sitting
Mm.
in her high chair, we're like, we can't even get past. And so I do feel like kids, in terms of tidying, it's like, yeah, they present lots of challenges, but I also feel like there's the emotional side and the mental side that you can't really prepare for. That I feel like when I became a dad, my like head and my heart were rewired in ways that I would never have known. It's like messes from my childhood and even from adolescence sort of started to resurface. I had these questions around, what do I actually want to do career wise with my life? Do I want to pursue positional power? Do I want to spend more time outside of the home? What does it look like to be completely mentally exhausted, but yet still have to go in and put a brave face on at school or at work? Because the people that you work with, the people that you serve in your job, they don't really care that you're tired. Like, you can't
Right.
make mistakes at work and say, oh, you got to remember, I have a 3-month-old at home. Like, that might work for you once, but like the world continues on. And so I do feel like, especially early parenthood, there was so much that I had to wrestle with. My identity totally shifted. And so that's part of Tidy Dad too, is we all have those aspects to our lives where our identities change, our priorities change, what we once valued changes. And that is a mess in and of itself that we sort of have to sort through and pull apart.
So how do you do it? How do you strike a balance between everything that you do, your side hustle, your job, your kids, being a spouse? What are a few tips and tricks that you can share with listeners?
Yeah. So one of the things that I found really helpful. So I've been working on writing a book for 2.5 years, Tidy Up Your Life. Came out in January. And one of the things that I talk about is this idea of being able to match your rhythms with your routine. And an exercise that I did, because I have a coach who I actually work with every couple weeks. And it's helpful because she's part therapist, also part just sounding board for business stuff or side hustle stuff, or how am I
Mm.
balancing my schoolwork with family life. And one of the things that was really grounding for me was this idea of being able to name my core values. And so she walked me through this exercise, and it's in the book, where I had to list out what my 8 core values were. And after listing those out, she invited me to rank them on a scale of 1 to 10, the degree to which I was currently like living out that value. When I
Mhm.
reflected on my like day-to-day work, what was it? And so I had values around family and around provision and around like joy and around sort of like mental and physical health. And so when I think about those values at any given time, when I feel like I'm completely sort of overwhelmed or swamped, I do feel like going back to that values wheel and seeing, how is my time? How's my energy? How is the choices that I'm making in alignment with those values? I feel like that is really helpful. And I feel like as a family, we have a very finite amount of time. And it's one of the things that I talk about
Right.
in my book, is that you can't upsize all areas of your life. Like, you can't have this blazing successful career while also being fully present at home with your kids, or feeling like you are, helping cook and clean, where you feel like you're a good friend to people, where you feel like, as an adult who still has parents, that I'm like still a good son and checking on my parents.
Yeah.
You can't do it all. And so that process of tidying things up, that process of editing, can also be applied to so many aspects of our lives, because when you try to do it all, something is going to come at a cost. And I've been through those seasons where I have been trying and pushing everything that I can into work, neglecting my family. And where did that leave? It led me to like a mental health breakdown, where I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I cannot keep pursuing all of this. And then I had to sort through that really big mess.
As you're pondering the values that are most dear to you, I'm sure obviously your family's first,
Mhm.
but I think what comes with that, I would think, particularly as an educator, not just as a husband, is instilling the same types of personal responsibility that you have for managing your home, right? You're passionate about
Yeah.
it. How do you involve your children in that process?
Yeah. So I think that, one of the values that we talk about with our girls oftentimes is this value around like choice or adventure. Like, I love to be able to spend our weekends out exploring New York City, this wonderful
Mhm.
place where we live. We have a cottage in Pennsylvania that we bought, several years ago. And I love when we're able to just retreat there for the summer and spend time swimming and paddleboarding and running and riding bikes. And, in order for all of those things to be able to fall into place, we've had to instill in them that we have to, work together as a family, that teamwork is something that I really value in addition to family. And the idea is that we have to be able to work together in order to make our home and our family run efficiently. And I know it's kind of strange to use that word efficiency to describe family. And for listeners who have young children or teenagers, the idea of efficiency, it almost makes you sort of laugh because there's like nothing efficient about either of those ages. But, when I think about efficiency, it's like knowing, okay, we have just brought all of the laundry back from the laundromat. Everyone needs to go into the bedroom. We're all going to sort our clothes by person, and then everybody puts away their things. How does that help from an efficiency standpoint? Because it's 5 people doing it instead of one person doing it. Knowing that, like, when we finish dinner, everybody clears the table until the table is clear. Like, it does not matter if you didn't eat the side dish or if it's your sister's fork or not.
Yeah.
Like, just grab as much as you can and take it over, because we have to hand wash every dish that is used in our house because we're in a 1914s building. There is not, you know, a dishwasher, just like we have no washing machine or dryer. So, I think when kids start to see this as a natural sort of thing, that what families do, I think that then opens up those other things that we value around adventure and time and choice. And the goal is someday to send our children off into the world, and they will know, one, how to care for themselves, but two,
Exactly.
when they walk into a place of work, when they see something that needs to be done, they do it, as opposed to waiting for that supervisor or boss to say, hey, I need you to do X, Y, or Z. As a teacher, my principal is not micromanaging me. I had to learn what to do in order to keep that classroom running, to communicate with families, how to keep the urgency up, the work production up. It wasn't like someone was in the back saying, oh, I need you to do this right now. Don't forget
Right.
to do X, Y, or Z. There's just the expectation that things are being done.
Yeah.
And so I feel like home is like the training ground. Like, it is training for game day. And I feel like game day is when we're ready to send our kids off into the world and hope that they're able to be productive and contributing and helpful and kind and caring, and not say, that's somebody else's responsibility. That's not mine. Why are you telling me to do that?
Right.
Because we have all worked with people who are like that. I have children in my classroom that are like that. And children are hardwired to push back and to ask questions. But it's just, you know, through that gentle sort of guiding, reminding them and equipping them then with the skills to be able to execute the particular task.
As a Modern Husbands podcast listener, you recognize the importance of evidence-based advice from leading national experts for your marriage. That's why we know you will love our marriage toolkit. Nearly 50 national experts came together to provide bite-sized advice to manage the toughest topics couples face in managing money in the home as a team. Go to modernhusbands.com for your free preview of our marriage toolkit to start, strengthen, or rebuild your marriage. Once again, that's modernhusbands.com to sign up for your free preview of our marriage toolkit. Now back to the show. Well, as you're preparing them for their game day, you're doing it with another coach, right? You're doing it with
Yeah.
your partner, with your wife.
Yeah.
How is it that you two have worked together to create this type of atmosphere?
Yeah. So, it's not easy to share a home with anyone, be it a spouse, be it a roommate, be it your children. And I do feel like from the start, we've really had to communicate around what our values are, the types of work that we enjoy doing, the types of work that brings stress. We've had to talk about even our own, professional work, what the mental, sort of emotional and physical toll on that is, how it
Mhm.
impacts who we are when we come home, because oftentimes we give our best selves to the people that we work with, or to the clients that we serve, or to the students that we work with. And then sometimes it's like you just give the people you live with the sloppy leftovers. And so we've had to really figure out through different seasons of life, how are we going to make this work? And so often, people talk about balance, and it's like, you know, as your listeners know, like, things are never 50-50. The goal in a home is not for things to be perfectly balanced, because that really isn't realistic. Like, you can't make a list and say, okay, there are 15 things on your to-do list. Now there are 15 things on my to-do list, and we're going to knock each of them off together so that we can then get to one and we're totally balanced. Like, that doesn't happen. And
Right.
so, we've really had to talk through things. We've had to figure out, what do we let go of in this season. There's a chapter in my book, it's chapter 5. It's titled "Stop Doing All the Work," and I chose that title, one, because it's a little bit provocative, because anyone reading a book on tidy up your life, when you read a chapter titled "Stop Doing All the Work," it's like, great, here's another person that's just telling me that if only I could set boundaries and tell people no, then the work would stop. And it's like, no, stop doing all the work could look like one of three things. So, one, you could outsource responsibilities. And when I was
Right.
talking about laundry, like, that is outsourcing responsibilities. My daughters are expected to help. You can also eliminate responsibilities. My favorite example is that, I love my house plants. They bring me joy, but I have an app that I pay that's like $25 for the year, and it tells me when it's time to water the plants. It's great because I have so much to think about, and all I have to do is get my measuring cups out when it tells me that it's time, and I get so much joy in not needing to remember that. Or you can also eliminate responsibilities. I often joke that my least favorite chore when I was a kid was yard work. I hated picking up sticks. I hated mowing the grass. It took forever. And so when I was an adult, what did I do? I moved to the largest city in the United States, and I don't have a yard. I don't have that work. So, you know, I feel like, with your partner, with your kids, with your spouse, whomever, like, when you can start to have some of these conversations around work, how you balance things, inside of the home and outside of the home. And again, I use the word balance, but it's that idea of, you know, how are we dividing and conquering? How are we sharing responsibilities? Whatever words you want to use, you have to at least talk about it, because when you don't talk about it, resentments build up. You have all of these questions about, why didn't you do X, Y, or Z? Or can't you be doing more around here? And it's like, fundamentally, if you're not talking about work sort of on a continual sort of basis, and I mean work inside of the home and outside of the home, um, it's going to be a mess.
Well, I'm glad that you started to give us a sneak peek into your book, because that's what I want to turn to next. Would you mind sharing first, obviously, the title of the book, and then, provide that summary that you can
Yeah.
expect to read when you're trying to decide which book to purchase?
Yeah, so the book is called Tidy Up Your Life. I really love that it's divided into two parts, which is Tidy Up Your Mind and Tidy Up Your Space. And I think that that order is important, because it's this idea of, how do you rethink that process of decluttering, and how do you make space for what really matters? Because decluttering is both a mental and a physical process. And it
Mhm.
draws from my experience as a teacher, what it was like to pursue positional power, because I thought that the next step was to become a school administrator, which for some people it makes them very happy, and for others and for
Not
others
me.
it leads them to a mental health breakdown that they then get to write a book about, which is which is what my experience was. um so it's some of the lessons that I've learned as we have, been navigating our life in New York City, and also as I've, sought to make sense of the mess that was my life. And then the second part of the book it's all about those like practical sort of like organizing, tidying, and cleaning strategies that so often, you know, when we bought our cottage in Pennsylvania, one of the best pieces of advice that a friend gave me was to follow the house inspector around. First of all, find a home inspector who will actually let you follow them around as
Hmm.
they're inspecting the property. And two, ask them all the questions because they're going to teach you as they're looking for things. They will teach you basically how to run your house and the things to look for. And so when we bought our
Mm.
cottage in Pennsylvania, we did that. And that home inspector was incredible, showing me how to access the crawl space, what to do to turn on and off my water as he was trying to turn it on and off, what all of the different things in the crawl space were. And so I feel like that's what the second half of the book is trying to do is it's trying to lay out what are some principles that you can adopt to almost any space? What are things you can look for when you're cleaning? Because I give the dirty dozen of each room in your home. And like, how do you clean the ceiling fans? Why should you clean your filters? Why should you clean your baseboards? How do you properly clean a toilet? Like, all of those are things that are very unglamorous, but also very practical and very important. So it's a balance of those things.
Are there any specific like tidying techniques or philosophies in your book that resonate particularly well with fathers?
Yeah. So, clothing, I do feel like is an important category. And if you want to make your wife, your spouse, whomever you live with really happy, it's if you can figure out your clothing situation in order to free up real estate for other people, they're going to be
Mm.
very happy. So, for me, I have a very small wardrobe. And when I say wardrobe, I'm talking about like the physical number of items that I have. But I
Hmm.
also have a super small closet. So my closet measures about 16 and a half to 17 inches wide by 7 feet tall. It's tiny. Like I can't walk in it. When people are like, does the floor of your closet ever get messy? I'm like, it would have to have a floor in order to get messy. Like like I cannot walk in. But that closet for me is like my organizational crown jewel. So I have a capsule wardrobe, which means that everything coordinates around four core colors. So my core
Okay.
colors are navy and olive, burgundy, and green. So all 4 seasons, those are the only four colors that I wear. A kid today at school was like, Mr. Moore, did you not wear that shirt yesterday? And I said, no, I wore a green polo yesterday, but it was long sleeve. Today's green polo is short sleeve. And she was like, you wore the same shirt. And I was like, stop trolling me. No, I didn't. But I should, sometimes I have to mix up the variety. But the big thing for me is that when I use that organizational approach with my closet, it reduced decision fatigue. Like I know
Yeah.
that everything coordinates with all of the other items. I can get dressed at the last minute because we have one bathroom. So I'm like the last person to get dressed. Also because I still have kids who like will put their hands on me. Like my youngest daughter, she loves peanut butter waffles. But if I serve her peanut butter waffles and then get dressed, I'm going to have peanut butter like all over me. So I'm the last one to get dressed, but everything mixes and matches. It's really easy for me to get dressed in the morning. It's really easy for me to see holes in my wardrobe. But like reducing decision fatigue is something that I am a huge advocate for because the fewer things that I have to think about means that I'm actually opening up my productive brain power for the more important things of life and the bigger decisions that I'm undoubtedly going to have to make as I go throughout my day.
What message do you hope that your readers and followers take away about the connection between tidiness, fatherhood, and personal growth?
So it's a great question. I hope that when I think about, sort of the reader on those last few pages of what is their big takeaway from my book, it's that one that I really love my family, that, as I have sought to declutter both, sort of my mental health and emotional health and also our physical space, that I truly have made space for what matters and what's important in life. That, you know, it's so important when I think about the decisions that I made professionally, and that my decision to, return to the classroom from being an administrator. I mean, I asked to return to the classroom at the same school where I had been an administrator, and it's really humbling to have to fold back in to the teaching staff that you had once supervised. And it takes a huge amount of relational work for them to have the trust, and for you to and for them to feel like you are part of them again. I
Mm-hmm.
recently tidied up, my work life again in the spring, that I made the decision to transfer schools to a school that was 6 blocks from our apartment. My older two girls were able to come with me so that we were all at the same school together, all of us having the same school schedule, the same commute, which for this season of life just simplifies things. But I hope that, readers understand that, you know, from my perspective and my story, I'm a dad. I love my family. I love my wife. I want to provide well for my family, but I also want to have this life that's just enough, that we have, just enough in order to be able to sustain the things that we love, the values that we have in place. And we all are on a different journey. We all live different lives. We all have different careers. Our families look different. But yet, I do believe that we all have ways that we can tidy things up. And I hope that people see a realistic and practical approach to the strategies that I'm outlining.
And where can listeners go to find your book, to buy your book?
Yeah. So Tidy Up Your Life is available wherever bookstores are sold, or wherever books are sold. In terms of bookstores, if you have a local bookstore, I would really
Yeah.
encourage you, whenever possible, to go to that local bookstore,
Yep.
because they are in the struggle along with all of us, and then you can always find me on Instagram. I'm at Tidy Dad. You can always find me at thetidydad.com. And if you have any tidying questions, I'm always an email away. I can't tell you how many people email me photos of, I just got this box from IKEA. How do I put this together? Or I have this little corner in my apartment. What do you think that I should use this for? So it's always fun to be able to, provide tidy tips and practical advice for what to do with the various spaces that we all live in. But if you do live in a castle, that one is a little bit tougher.
What is one piece of simple and actionable advice you want to leave our listeners with today?
So the one piece of practical actionable advice is, when you use something, just go put it away when you're finished. If
Yeah.
you pull out the scissors from that drawer, put the scissors back. If you are, cutting things in the kitchen or using all those specialty gadgets, wash it and put it away. I feel like so often there's so much tidying that has to be done at the end of the day, just because we don't take that like 5 to 10 seconds to just put
Mhm.
something back. So I do feel like that is practical. We can all do it, and it'll make the people that you live with just a little bit happier.
I could talk to you all day, Tyler. I'm sure our listeners could listen to you all day. Thanks for such a great conversation.
Thanks for having me.
A special thanks to our guest and, of course, to all of our listeners. Don't forget to click subscribe wherever you download your podcast, give us a rating, and share the Modern Husbands podcast with others. Doing so goes a long way in growing our reach. And join your fellow modern husbands and have links to our podcasts, articles, and other resources to manage money in the home as a team sent to your inbox every 2 weeks by subscribing to our newsletter at modernhusbands.com. Until next time, be well.